A few regional airlines gave me a job offer as a first officer, and I'm going to start training for one of them. I'm going to tell you all about it right now. Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. My name is Nati, and as you can see by my rebranded logo, I'm a concert violinist and a pilot. Today I want to talk to you about regional airlines conditional job offers. Which should you choose? Why? What should you pay attention to? And if you stick to the end of the video, I'll share my choice with you. And starting tomorrow, I'll start training for that airline. Right here is my first officer, Ben, and he is going to help us break everything down. Right, Ben? He's busy. So the conditional job offers from all the regional airlines you applied to came in. Let's focus on 4 things that you may want to consider before making your choice. 1 would be the quality of life. 2, how much are they going to pay you? 3, where are you going to be based? And 4, which is very important but not discussed very often, is the communication with the airline before you're accepting the job. First thing we should talk about is quality of life, which is quite huge, sometimes even more important than how much you are being paid. So if you work for a regional airline, you might see something called ready reserve. That's when you just sit at the airport and wait for them to call you. A lot of the regional airlines are doing away with it, but not all of them. So that's something that you definitely want to pay attention to. Another very important quality of life item is how many days off per month you get. Some airlines give you 11 days, some airlines give you 12. In my case, the airline I chose gives 12 days off, which is a guarantee that you know you're not going to work. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to work the rest of the month. It really just depends on your line. So as you look into it, if you like your days off and you want to maximize those, try and look at the ones that give you 12 days rather than 11 and start from there. Lastly, tied into the quality of life is the culture of the company. How are people treating you in the company, and how are your coworkers going to treat you? That's something that you can easily find on Facebook boards, on airline pilot forums, many places where you can read opinions about the airline. Now beware, sometimes you have people there who are a little bit too loud for no apparent reason. Try and filter those out and see from the actual people who constantly reply, what is the culture in the company? Are these people you actually want to work with? The second thing we should talk about is how much you are going to be paid as a brand new first officer. A lot of the regional airlines nowadays pay quite well, and it's very interesting to see how that whole pay increase evolved over the last maybe 6 months. When I started my interview process in April 2022, I actually started with the company I ended up choosing. That company back at the time paid about $53 per hour. About a month later, all the American Airlines wholly owned companies, which are Envoy, PSA, and Piedmont, bumped their scale up significantly to $90 an hour, and you can see it's a huge discrepancy between $53 and $90. Following that, during the summer, a lot of other regional airlines started raising their rates, including a bunch of them that I actually applied to and got conditional job offers from. The airline I actually chose stayed pretty much on the low end of the scale, which was very interesting to witness during the summer. However, here's a tip. If you're looking at a serious airline, you can bet that they're not going to stay at the low end of the pay scale for very long, because they will not be competitive and all the pilots are just going to live somewhere else.
Anyway, I am gonorrhea.
Which is kind of what happened. I decided not to make any decisions until all the cards were on the table, and that paid off. It turns out that just last month, the airline I am going to train for went back to being the highest paying airline in the industry. I think we're going to be paid about $100 per hour, which is insane for a first officer nowadays. So point of that is, don't rush to the first airline that pays you the most. Still look at the quality of life, and as we're going to talk later, still look at how the airline treats you before you start training, because that's going to tell you a lot. The third thing on our list has to do with your base. Where are you going to be flying out of? Many people will tell you that the best thing for you to do is to be based close to home because the quality of life is much better and you can just commute to work with a car or a train or an Uber. In my case, I live really close to Reagan Airport in Washington, D.C., maybe about 5 minutes drive. But I chose an airline that is not based in Reagan, even though I have a conditional offer from an airline that is. Why did I do that? Well, the main reason for that is because the airline that is based out of DC has a ridiculously long reserve time. You ask yourself what reserve is, or you might actually know, but for those of you who don't, when you finish your training, you're not senior enough to hold your own line, your own schedule. So the airline puts you on call, and that's called reserve. You're not going to fly as much, especially nowadays where there's so many first officers and not enough captains in the regional airline industry. So you want to maybe go somewhere where the reserve times are much lower. That means commuting out of your base to a place where they need more pilots right now. In my case, I am going to be commuting to New York. So if you think about it, from Reagan to New York, there are a lot of flights, maybe every 20-30 minutes. So that's not a long commute or an impossible commute. I think the difference will be about 6 months in reserve between New York and here. So you can see why that choice might actually be better in achieving lines, which gives you better schedules, which gives you the seniority that you want, and then your quality of life increases exponentially. So try and think about it not as right now, like what's the best base that I can go to. In my opinion, the best base you can have as a regional airline pilot is where you can get the most amount of flying right off the bat and get your hours. The last thing on the list, which is very important but not often discussed, with the culture at the airline, but more importantly, the communication with you. How is the airline communicating with you before you even start training? In my case, the airline I chose to go with was always super friendly, super communicative, very professional, got things moved on time. I got my job offer about a day after the interview. It is just a pleasure to work with them, which gives you the feeling that they really want you there and you really want to be there. On the flip side, there are those regional airlines that will take 2 to 3 weeks to get back to you, or give you a conditional job offer after a month, or not answer all your questions very directly. Pay attention to those things because, as it turns out, in my case, there was one airline that did that. They even offered a class date to just later push it by 3 months. And those slow communication, the lack of answers, can actually indicate a much bigger problem. Maybe they had too many first officers and they stopped hiring, which actually ended up what happened. Or maybe they're understaffed and they don't have the capacity to deal with so many pilots, or they're in a transition of some sort. It can be a million different things, but it can also affect your job as a pilot. And if they already kind of sideline your communication and not communicate with you before you're even a part of that company, you can expect that things are going to be a little bit bumpy even when you join. So these are the 4 things that I would recommend you look into when you're evaluating your conditional job offers. Some circumstances may be different than my circumstances, so you want to really do what's best for you, but do keep in mind that there is a captain shortage in the regional airline industry. That means you want to go to the company that hires right now, regardless of whether it's near you or it pays you the best, because a lot of companies are starting to freeze first officer hiring.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
I promised to share with you the original airline that I chose, and that is Endeavour Air. It is Delta Airlines' regional subsidiary, and I'm hoping to be based out of New York on the CRJ 900. It's a very exciting time. They have been a joy to work with so far. They sent some iPads and badges and a lot of paperwork to work on, and training actually starts tomorrow, so I'm very excited about that. And in fact, for all of you who are curious about airline training, I'm going to make a video at the end of most of the training days, very short ones, just to tell you what we've been working on and what to expect. So if you have a question about airline training or flying in general, please leave it in the comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button so you can know when the next video comes out. And until then,
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.